filthy flea-bitten things. You ever been to the bayou before? If the quicksand don't kill you, the water moccasins will. But worst of all are them dirty, flea-bitten cats. I see one just lying on its back one day like it wants its belly rubbed, so I'm like, okay, I'll go over and do the thing. And next you know, I got this. That's alright. I got even with him one day. Yeah, I found a big one, and I took its hand right off. Yeah. I don't like any of this. Yeah, opening titles, running strong, episode 2. I knew that it was not a waste of time to put extra effort into an opening title card. Today we're going to be kind of getting away from the furriness and more into the scaliness, I guess. Yeah, it seems often when you're dealing with horror films based on sort of animal people, kind of scaly creatures tend to be more common, more frequent, because I guess just it's kind of scarier, it's creepier than something that's covered in fluffiness. Today we're looking at a little gem from the 1950s called the Alligator People. And an interesting thing about this one is that this is not your typical kind of 50s schlock fest. I mean, it is kind of on the schlocky side, but it's not your typical schlock fest. It's not like a monster running amok, killing as many people as it possibly can, causing total havoc and chaos. This one's a little bit more subtle. This one almost feels more like a Twilight Zone episode to me, kind of like. It's actually kind of trying to be maybe a little bit smart, a little bit more subtle and on the cautionary side about how far can we take science. The basic gist of the story is that our main character, Joyce Webster, has recently been married to her husband, Paul Webster. Joyce was a nurse, and she met Paul after he was discharged from, I think it was the Air Force, after he was in a plane crash that horribly mutilated him, that he seems to be fine right now. Apparently Joyce didn't question this too much. She's just like, wow, you don't even look like you were in a plane crash. So anyway, they're off on their honeymoon, and Paul ends up getting a letter basically saying something bad. Yeah, we don't really know what the letter says, but he's clearly upset about it, and they're about to leave on a train, and he ends up getting off the train, leaving Joyce behind, and she's just like, what the heck are you doing? Okay, so I'm on the train now, by myself. Fool, I guess. So yeah, Joyce is a little upset that her new husband has just kind of vanished out of thin air. Like, she has no idea where he's at now. So Joyce is just like, you know, where the heck did my husband go? And she's very upset about it, and she ends up doing a little bit of an investigation, and this ends up leading her to a plantation in the bayou. So she ends up going there. While there, she gets a ride to the plantation by the one and only Lon Chaney Jr., who some of you may know more famously as playing the Wolfman in the Universal films. Here he's playing just kind of like this scuzzy, creepy man of the bayou. He works at the plantation, this whatever there. So he ends up giving Joyce a ride to the plantation. It puts you a little bit on edge. Like, is he going to do something? He doesn't really seem like a great guy. And he ends up talking about, you know, like all the gators and all the things out in the bayou. And he clearly has a lot of hatred towards the gators. He has a hook hand. She, you know, explains that one of the gators took his hand. And in a bit of rage, he almost runs over a gator. And there's a bit of awkward editing in this sequence, which kind of bothers me a bit, because one, is just like not a very well edited scene, but also it's like, did they hurt that gator for real? Back in the old days, they didn't really give a crap so much, so I really can't tell. But also the awkward editing makes me wonder, did they break just before hitting it? In the movie, it's made to look like the gator runs off before it gets hit, but I don't know, it's just a very weird scene. It's a little uncomfortable. But after all that chaos, she gets dropped off at the plantation, where she meets this woman who is supposed to be Paul's mother, and the woman claims that she is not Paul's mother and that she needs to get the heck out of here. Super rude about the whole thing. So Joyce is like, okay, I guess I'll leave. But oh wait, she can't, because there's not going to be another train until the morning. So Joyce has to spend the night at this plantation with this weird woman who she thought was her mother-in-law, I guess, but it's totally not. There's a lot of weird mystery going on, basically, is what's going on here. Are you following along with me? I know this is a lot. So Joyce is told that she can stay the night, but she has to stay in her room the whole time. And naturally, she doesn't listen because she hears this mysterious piano playing in the middle of the night. So she leaves her room and ends up seeing what looks like her husband, Paul, playing the piano. Oh, okay. She calls his name, Paul, you know, and this guy ends up running away. We get a brief look at him, and he appears to be covered in scales like an alligator. And we do find out afterwards that it is Paul, and there is something weird going on. that Joyce cannot know about. Paul wanted to be there completely in secret, but she found him anyway. And can you go figure that out? Your husband just wants to vanish out of nowhere after you get married, and then you can't just let him do that. You gotta make a big deal out of it. So Joyce, after that, decides that she's not gonna leave the next day. She wants answers. She just saw her husband. She knows something's going on, so she's staying until she gets this whole thing sorted out. I think it's the following night she ends up having another encounter with Paul. Paul, who thought that Joyce had left, but she did not. And then Paul ends up running out to the swamp, and Joyce follows after him this time. And while she's out in the swamp, she is encountering all of the horrible things. Because swamps in the bayou, I guess, are just a nightmare. It's a freaking nightmare. There's one point where she's like walking around looking for Paul, and then she steps over an alligator. And like, oh my god, it's an alligator. She just stepped right over it. And it looks like a real alligator up until it kind of opens its mouth and moves a little bit. Then it kind of looks like it might be like a puppet or something. A decent looking puppet, but still you can kind of tell that it's fake after it moves. But still, before that, it's like, whoa, holy crap. And then she like encounters another gator, and that one's moving a lot more, and you're like, that's clearly real. They used a real gator for that shot. I hope they paid this woman well, because you cannot pay me enough to get that close to a freaking gator. So there's just all these things going on that are just getting ready to kill her. And then Lon Chaney's character shows up, and he ends up saving her right before she gets killed by a snake or something. And he brings her to his little shack, and she thinks that she's safe now. She's just kind of trying to calm down. Holy crap. Gators and snakes everywhere. What a nightmare. But she thinks she's fine. And then Chaney starts kind of gradually getting really weird. Like, he's trying to get her to take a drink. He's trying to get her to take her wet clothes off. He's being a total creep. And then he just like starts getting like real aggressive. Like he's trying to force himself on her. And you're just like, oh my god, what a stanky scumbag. Which I think speaks a lot to the acting abilities of Lon Chaney Jr. actually, because you just hate him in this movie so much. But everything I hear about Chaney in real life kind of makes him sound like he was a very sweet, nice person. That's what you call good acting. But anyway, while he's doing that, Paul ends up walking into the shack, and he just like beats the crap out of Chaney. Like, just got some sick karate moves and stuff. So yeah, Chaney's a little butthurt about that whole situation, and he's just like,
I'll kill you, alligator man! Just like I'd kill any four-legged gator!
Oscar-worthy moment. I love that line. But yeah, so Paul saves Joyce, and then the following day, they kind of start coming to the conclusion that they need to start being more honest about the situation. Because lying and hiding things, that's just going to put Joyce in more danger. So Joyce ends up talking with the Dr. Sinclair, who has been working with Paul on this new medical discovery. Basically, this Dr. Sinclair has found a way to take, I guess, like the DNA from like lizards, or he explained this whole thing. It kind of didn't really make a whole lot of sense, but basically the idea is lizards have the ability to grow back limbs after they've been lost, and he was trying to develop something to help humans gain that same ability. So he was using some sort of like alligator DNA or whatever to make it so that humans can grow back limbs and regenerate other flesh that's been lost. A lot of weird, fancy sci-fi logic that kind of sounds like it makes sense until I stop to think about, like, I don't think alligators grow back limbs. This could have just been like lizard people. Probably would have made more sense. It's basically, if you're familiar with the lizard character from the Spider-Man comics, where the dude is like missing an arm, and then he develops this stuff with lizard DNA or whatever to grow back his arm. But then it goes a little bit too far, and he starts turning into a lizard person. Same basic ideas going on here. I dare say that Spider-Man stole this idea from this movie, but it made more sense when Spider-Man did it because it was a lizard, not an alligator. Either way, it's kind of neat. I mean, it's sci-fi. Let's not think about it too much. So that's what he's doing with Paul, because Paul was in a plane crash, and it basically mutilated his whole body. And this is how he was able to look normal for a while, but after a while, this like gator DNA started to kick in, and he got all scaly. So Joyce is just like, huh. But that's okay, because she still loves Paul, and she says he'll be as handsome as ever in no time. Which basically means that he's disgusting right now, but we'll get there. So the doctor is working on some sort of final experiment that he's a little reluctant to do because it could kill Paul, but Paul's just like, it's not getting any better either way. I'd rather die than stay like this, so let's just do the experiment. So they hook Paul up to this crazy machine that shoots like whatever, like solar rays or whatever sci-fi crap it is at him. The science doesn't need to make sense, you know, it's just, you get it, whatever. And everything may have gone well, except Chaney's character kicks in, because he is ticked off at this dang alligator man. He wants some payback. He kicked his butt earlier, he's not going to take that lying down. So Chaney's walking in, he's super drunk, he's got a gun, he's trying to act like a hotshot. And he ends up breaking into the lab, and he finds Paul in the middle of the experiment going on, and he's ready to get his revenge. But something ended up going wrong, and Paul is now a full-fledged gator man. He has like an actual like alligator head. So anyway, him and Cheney have another little interaction as Cheney tries to throw his hook at him, but his hook ends up hitting the electrical cord, and then he dies from being electrocuted because he's stupid or whatever. And then Paul ends up running out back into the swamp. Joyce is chasing after him. There's a little bit of some shenanigans going on. I think Paul fights another alligator. It's just anarchy. It's so chaos. It's nuts. Until Paul ends up getting stuck in quicksand, and that is where he dies. And Joyce is just like, ah! Because honestly, just what a crappy day. So yeah, that's the Alligator People. I should mention, you do see other half gator people throughout. That's why it's called Alligator People. I feel like I should just mention that, but they're not like important to the plot or anything. So let's get into my ranking of the film. Like last time, I have creeps, gore, thrills, and monster, but I also added a new category because I thought it was important, and that is story. Each category is worth like 10 points. That's 50 total points that a film can get. For creeps, I gave it a 5 out of 10 because some of the gator people are kind of a little creepy to me, I think. They're just making weird gurgling noises, and the film has kind of like a mysterious vibe to it. Gore gets a 0 out of 10. There is no blood or gore or anything in this film. Thrills, I'm going to give it a 5 out of 10. And even then, it's just because there's moments where people are right up against real alligators, and I'm like, what? Then monster, I'm going to give an 8 out of 10. Because it's not the best monster. There are parts you can kind of see like the seams on the mask, and it looks a little bogus, but it's still kind of a cool design. I like it, I dig it, whatever. And then the story, I will give it 9 out of 10. Because it's a pretty good story. Pretty good, just like classic kind of sci-fi story that kind of tried to be somewhat smart instead of just, just a monster on the loose. So that ends up being a 27 out of 50 possible points. Not bad at all, I don't think. So yeah, go watch it, I guess. It's on YouTube. Bye.